Although they are among the most primitive of flowering plants in terms of their floral design, buttercups are one of the most successful groups of wildflowers, with something like 600 species worldwide, 133 of them here in Europe, and about 15 species in the wild in Ireland. The most common and familiar woodland species of buttercup is Lesser celandine, which is just now beginning to fade away as the trees take on their leaf canopy. But there is another woodland species which manages to make itself almost invisible by drifting away from the familiar buttercup floral design, and that is the wood buttercup or Goldilocks. The flowers have a ragged look, only occasionally having 5 regular petals, more often fewer than 5 and smaller, so that they often have a deformed or stunted look to them. This ragged appearance makes them surprisingly hard to actually see. Even the leaves on the stem have a carelessly irregular look to them, with little in the way of a standout pattern. It also differs from other land buttercups in its lack of acidic poisonous sap. Otherwise, the flowers have the typical buttercup structure. They have 5 sepals behind the 5 unequal petals, and there is an encircling cluster of stamens around a clutch of one-seeded carpels in the middle of the flower. These have styles that are unusually long for a buttercup, giving them the appearance of a flock of little birds as they develop into fruitlets after fertilization. However ragged their appearance, the flowers still manage to catch the eye of pollinating insects, notably solitary bees, hoverflies and dungflies in search of the nectar secreted, as is the case of other buttercups, by a little pouch at the base of the petals. One of the most intriguing things about Goldilocks is the nectaries, because they differ between different petals. If you look at an ordinary buttercup, the nectary is a little flap at the base of the petal. On the most regular petals, the nectary is a little flap at the base of the petal, similar to what you find in more familiar buttercups. But in some normal petals, this is replaced by 2 small flaps, one on either side. In some of the more stunted-looking petals, there is a larger pocket at the base of the petal, which is fused to the petal at the bottom few millimetres, but the top few millimetres are open. In the flap between there are 2 deeply sunk nectar canals, separated by a little fold. It is as though each petal has a limited budget, and if more of it is allocated to nectary manufacture, less is available for petal display, and vice versa. What we are seeing here is a small first step in a direction that reaches perfection in a different tribe of the family, the hellebores, where the entire petal has turned into an elaborate nectary, and the advertising function of the petals has been taken over by the sepals. This is Helleborus niger, the Christmas rose, with its snow-white petaloid sepals, inside which you can see its ring of green, purse-like, petal-derived nectaries. You might think that such an irregular, ragged-looking flower hardly deserves the name Goldilocks. But this was the name given to it in the 17th century by John Gerard, because of the golden locks wherewith the flower is thrummed, as he describes it. But in fact, this was also the name given to it by Linnaeus. The scientific Latin name for Goldilocks is Ranunculus auricomus, and auricomus in Latin means Goldilocks. Its name in Irish is Gruig Wirra, Our Lady's hair. You might well be forgiven for thinking that Goldilocks has sort of given up on taking any care with its appearance or attractiveness. And you might well be right, because Goldilocks is apomictic, which means that the ovules develop into seeds without fertilization. And one consequence of this is that all the offspring are genetically identical to the parent plant, and any genetic variations acquired by the plant can be passed on to the offspring directly. And this makes for some enormous taxonomic headaches, because distinctive local populations can build up which are sometimes regarded as species. The same challenge that botanists face with groups such as brambles and dandelions, both of which are also apomictic.